My name is Shashe Jefferson, and this is my presentation on cell phone etiquette for the course Qualitative Analysis with Professor Jill Kaplan. Cell phone usage has become so commonplace that it appears to have replaced common courtesy. Everywhere you go, people are on their cell phones, in their cars, on the bus, in the store, at the doctor's office, and even at church. It appears that there is no place that is out of bounds. But should there be? Should common courtesy dictate that specific public places are off limits for cell phone usage? This research study intends to investigate if people continue to engage in personal phone conversations when it is time to conduct their transaction with the cashier when shopping. Just think about it from the cashier's perspective. You are ringing up the customer's order and telling them their total, yet they have not bothered to pay you and are holding up the line because they are so engrossed in their phone conversation. The specific question this study will address is how many people continue to engage in personal phone conversations when it is time to conduct their transaction with the cashier. Research has shown that cell phone usage proves distracting to a person's ability to avoid hazards when they are walking, which is imperative to their safety, and conclude if they are so oblivious to these hazards, then they are clearly blinded to the emotions of those they encounter. When addressing the specific phenomenon of continuing a phone conversation while conducting a shopping transaction with the cashier, there are many reasons why this behavior would be deemed inappropriate. The cashier must deal with the fact that the customer's attention is divided between their phone conversation and with the transaction that is taking place in front of them. Most people have an inability to hold two conversations at one time without one getting less attention than the other. Often those on the cell phone are talking about things that will be better discussed in a private setting, and seemingly do not realize that even though only one side of the conversation can be heard, most people can deduce the gist of the conversation and are now privy to their personal information. Additionally, this distraction makes the checkout process longer for the customer on the phone and the other customers in line behind them as they take longer to render payment, accept change, and prepare their items to exit. There are also problems that are dealt with by the other customers in the line, such as hearing the caller's use of foul language and inappropriate conversation material. This makes what is normally a mundane task longer and more bothersome than normal, especially if, as most cell phone users do, the caller is speaking with an elevated voice or has a loud and or annoying ringtone. The subject of inappropriate cell phone usage behavior has been addressed in multiple surveys and studies, but none was located that specifically addressed the interaction between the phone user and the cashier. With the invention of new technologies like the cell phone, social norms and rules, which at one time were clearly defined and expected, seem to have diminished greatly, if not disappeared altogether. This one form of rude behavior has an impact on human beings in general, as it serves as one of many examples of how common courtesy is no longer common. Take, for instance, when you're entering a building and you hold the door for a person behind you. How many of those people said thank you? Did you even expect them to say thank you? Lack of courtesy and politeness or manners has become so normal that it is no longer expected. Please, thank you, yes, sir, and no, sir, all seem to be a thing of the past. This goes hand in hand with giving the cashier your undivided attention as they attempt to service your shopping needs. I'm sure most shoppers would take offense if they went into their local store and the cashier was too busy on their phone to greet them and then pointed to the screen to indicate their total. This is an example of the one sided respect that people think they deserve but do not owe to others. When I was in my mid 20s, I was a newly divorced mother of a toddler, and I took a job as a cashier at a local grocery store. It was not until that job that I knew that common courtesy was no longer common. After dealing with my own private issues at home, I would put on a brave face and a smile and go to work. Once there, I was often berated for being a lowly cashier, ignored as people talked on their phones, yelled at for prices being incorrect, etc. From beginning to end, it was the cashier's, fault. When I left at the end of my shift, I not only left with the emotions that I came in with, but also the baggage that was levied on me by many people I encountered. Let me not leave you with the impression that this experience was all bad. This experience served to teach me how to be courteous, respectful, patient, humble, understanding, and compassionate. I had firsthand knowledge that a kind word can make all the difference. Now, when I go to the store, I end all phone conversations before entering the line. I call the cashier by name and I place the money in their hand, hoping that by doing my part and showing common courtesy to others, this will inspire them to do the same. To conduct a qualitative study determining how many people will continue to engage in personal phone conversations when it is time to conduct their transaction with the cashier, I would conduct a naturalistic observation. This observation would need to take place in a high traffic public location that has many checkout lanes that are manned by human cashiers, not the self checkout lanes, all of which are visible from one central location but inconspicuous. I have chosen one of the local supercenters, which is conveniently located between several military and civilian communities. This will allow me to observe a diverse demographic of the local population. Within the supercenter, they have several benches at the front of the store that allow inconspicuous, unobstructed visual contact with at least 5 man registers at any one time. To record the needed data, I would need to develop several different charts. One to record the number of customers per register, and of those customers, how many of them continue to engage in their personal phone conversation. A chart is also needed to record any extraneous data observed regarding the customer on the phone, the cashier, and or the interaction between the two. Once the data has been evaluated, a visual diagram would need to be created to best explain the results of the data. Informed consent was not mentioned as a part of the study since this is a naturalistic observation and there is no interaction between myself, the researcher, and the customer on the phone, the participant. Informed consent is deemed unnecessary by the American Psychological Association Code of Ethics. When the customer approached the cashier, did they end their phone conversation? This is an example of the type of question that will be asked in the Unit 6 qualitative study. However, many other questions would also need to be asked, such as, was the customer on the phone prior to entering the line? Did the customer appear distracted by the conversation? Did the cashier appear annoyed with the customer being on the phone? Was anything said to the customer regarding being on the phone? Did the transaction take longer than the average transaction because the customer was on the phone? Many, many more could be asked to more specifically determine if indeed the root of the problem was the fact that the customer was on the phone. Additional questions that I would ask and answer would be, was the customer on the phone talking at an elevated level? If the register is within hearing distance, I would ask, what did the customer's phone conversation consist of? Inappropriate material, foul language? Lastly, I would note the body language of the other customers in line around the participant to make a determination on their level of annoyance. Seeing that a clear majority of the population failed to display proper etiquette in social settings when using their cell phones, businesses have felt the need to resort to posting signs such as the ones displayed on the screen that in no uncertain terms let the consumers know that cell phone usage in their establishment is unacceptable. This forces the consumer to conclude their call before conducting their business and thereby giving the employees of the establishment their undivided attention, which is a level of respect that is deserved by all. However, business establishments are not the only ones who have grappled with the need to diminish this inappropriate behavior. Religious facilities have also taken to posting signs, such as the one on your screen, that remind parishioners of appropriate behavior with a measure of comedy. The results of this study will either prove my hypothesis that cell phone usage has become so commonplace that it appears to have replaced common courtesy, showing that society is becoming more ill mannered as we become more technologically advanced, or disprove my hypothesis and show that despite my jaded outlook on humanity, most people are still considerate and use good manners when it comes to cell phone usage and interaction with the cashier at the local supercenter. In addition, the results might also give some insight into other inappropriate behaviors that are observed that can be adjusted to make for a better world. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and please note that all images included in this presentation were obtained using Google image search.